Sorry, pardon me. I was just playing video games. I mean, welcome to 100x Engineering. Drew, did you do an intro?
I might have. You're just missing all of my intros. So
damn it. I need to
rewatch the stream.
My vision's always obstructed. Welcome to 100x Engineering, the live stream where you learn all the skills necessary to become not a 1x, 10x, 11x engineer, but a 100x engineer. The latest live stream that will now be having a website and landing page associated with it. So bougie monocle time. We've really made it. So thanks to our 2.4 million followers for getting us to the point where we're worthy to have a website now. Witty banter topics, Drew. This is the moment for it. What do you got for me?
I'm trying to fix my headphones right now because AirPods decided to crap out right before we started, of course. So let me know if you get some feedback. I'll use the speakers for now. But I don't know. Witty banter. What's been up? Yeah, I'll tell you about my intro because it was kind of funny and it would probably traumatize you. But I had these trimmers and I was getting close to the mustache.
That is.
Could you imagine if I showed up with no mustache?
No, I cannot. That would be probably the most baller intro we've had yet. I don't know. Tyler's is actually pretty good where he floated in from space, but that would actually be most jaw-dropping, I guess. What's a cliffhanger on the front side of things? Like a cliff fronter? I don't know. I discovered Fortnite over the weekend because my 8 and 9-year-old nephews flew into town, so we played like 10 hours of that game. Their dad's like,
you for being 14 years old, but that makes sense. So
it's like you're playing with them, and then there's like two dads playing with like the kids, and they're like, we're like getting like really into it. And they're like, guys, we're just having fun. It's like, no, we gotta go. Get in the car. So, anyways, that was surprisingly fun. Do you want to give a brief introduction to our guest today? Shifting gears.
Yeah, we're going to have a star designer from JupiterOne here. His name's Patrick. He's a really cool dude. He's basically famous on the interwebs. You've probably seen his tweets. We have on our notes here, Patrick is a wizard. I think that's a very good qualification.
It sums it up, really. Like,
it's really about all there is. I guess we should welcome Patrick.
Give a round of applause for Patrick Morgan, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Let's play some sweet JupiterOne music.
You can't do that.
How's that intro?
That
I didn't have any music.
I shouldn't complain. That was amazing.
All right, I don't need my sunglasses. Casey Neistat style.
The keyboard, that was... My heart is a flutter.
Yeah, you see, this whole keyboard's always on my desk.
That is amazing. I have one of these things on my desk, but it's good.
You got your guitars in the background. We're a very musical crew.
We are a musical crew. We'll just have a jam session on a live stream sometime. That'll be fun.
Heck yeah.
Patrick, tell us a little about yourself that Drew didn't already cover, aside from the fact that you're famous and you're a wizard.
Yeah, well, I'm Patrick Morgan. I'm the principal product designer at JupiterOne. I have held a lot of different positions within tech. And outside of tech. I started as a brand strategist at a big ad agency called Leo Burnett. Did that for a bit and realized I hated advertising, but I liked certain aspects of that job. So I quit and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I started just going every day into a coffee shop. And I started realizing that I should do something good with my time. And I started teaching myself to code. And after doing that for long enough, I was like, I think I would like to try to do this as a career. So I found a boot camp in the very early days of boot camps existing. Went and did that. Got a job coming out of that at American Express, where I was I was a design technologist. I was a front-end developer embedded on a product design team.
Was design technologist your actual title?
Yeah, it was.
I've never heard that title before. That's cool.
Yeah, sometimes creative technologist was also bouncing around those days, but design technologist.
I like that.
Yeah, so I got to be sort of the front-end dev that was embedded on this product design team that was like full of really great designers from awesome product design agencies like Frog, which is a big agency that did all the Apple stuff in the early days, and some others. So I did that for a few years. until I moved out to LA. I joined this small startup that had no designers. I joined as a front-end dev. And since there were no designers, I just had to do the design myself if I wanted it to look good. So I started doing that. And after a number of months, sort of doing double duty, the leaders of the company were like, hey, Pat, you want to just do design and we'll give your dev work to somebody else? And I had this kind of moment where I had to think about what I really wanted to do day to day versus what I liked doing, but more as like a hobby. And I decided that for me, looking around at the other front end devs that I knew who were awesome at that, they cared more about certain technical details than I did. And I knew I was never going to be able to match them at that, but I cared more about certain aspects of the design of it. So I
I thought
decided,
you were gonna say I looked around at like all the other like front end devs and realized like I don't want to be around these people.
no, it wasn't that. It
Direction.
was,
I was like, hit the mute button.
Gee, Patrick.
no, it wasn't. It really wasn't that. It was more like there was a certain level of just caring about the incredible attention to detail that you need to really implement stuff on the front end. Just like the technical mastery that I liked, but I didn't love it. I didn't want to go as deep into learning all the new frameworks. I just wanted to get good designs out there. So because of that, I was like, sure, on a day-to-day basis, I think being a product designer would be a better fit for me. And that's been sort of that was my path. And then I have just been a product designer since, worked at a number of different cybersecurity companies, and am now at JupiterOne.
And how lucky we are to have you on the team.
You're right.
You've just teased out like 30 things that we're going to dig into here, so I'm excited about that. Before we do that, though, let me introduce the game without further ado. Actually, Drew, are you able to describe the game?
Maybe.
I've been really excited to play this one. I'm excited to play all of them though because they're all.
It's not called Reverse Tetris. What is it called?
It calls itself Reverse Tetris in some places.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know. It's a tile-based game. You go around, you try and collect blocks, and you join them to yourself as like this block blob, but you also can attack other people and steal their blocks.
Yep.
Do you guys remember in the early days of the iPhone, there was this game called, I think it was called Osmos, something like that, where you were like a little blob.
Yeah, you absorb the circle.
And you absorb the other circles.
Is that like those IO games that were popular? What was the IO version?
I like that, but it was like you'd have to move around by like ejecting little bits of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little like that because you go around and you accumulate your blocks in this case instead of.
It's
blocks.
like 100x branded that, where it's like just a little janky and a little using design library from like the late 90s, early 2000s clip art. So, anyways, I've got this up on the screen, but at a high level, I've just dropped the link in there for anybody that wants to come and play with us. Be sure to change your name on the main screen before you join the game. You move around with the mouse button, and you can pick up pieces with the space bar, and you drop pieces with the M button. For those of you that really want to get into it, though, you got a whole bunch of power-ups over here on the left that you can hover over and see what they do. So we're going to be playing this. I'm going to be trying to steal Patrick and Drew's little Tetris pieces. We almost started late because we were playing this and I got very into it. So that might have been why we were a couple minutes late, actually. So links in there. Please come play with us. I'm going to keep an eye on. Here's it just me here. No, we got Drew and Pat here. Okay.
I'm collecting blocks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to come and steal your blocks from you. But while I'm doing that, Patrick, you mentioned some of the motivation about why you shifted from being a designer or being an engineer. Creative technologist, design technologist.
Design technologist, yeah.
Design technologist. To becoming a designer, which is cool. Do you miss anything about kind of the tech aspect of that, or like the more engineering oriented side of your job, or has it been just kind of smooth sailing? Like never want to look back.
For me personally, it was the right call. I still enjoy programming. Oh man, as Carter steals all my blocks.
Well, you stole my blocks, dude.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go.
But what I like about programming now is that I actually just get to avoid all of the hard parts of programming at a big company and just enjoy the, oh, come on, man, leave the blocks alone.
I took everything that you had. Keep talking. I'm sorry. Was I distracted?
He came in and stole all my blocks right as he asked me a question.
I just ate them all up. I'm so pleased with myself right now.
I guess what I do miss is just the ability to express the ideas that I had directly into code. And there's this level of translation that necessarily has to happen now between the stuff that I design, like in Figma, and the stuff that you guys get into the browser. And that's okay. That's sort of just part of the process, but there ends up being so much back and forth that sometimes I just wish that we could just jump in there together and do more prototyping together, which is what I really like doing.
Well, on that point, Patrick, you are by far one of the strongest dev skilled designers I've ever worked with. And I feel like you often are pretty hands-on in the technical decisions that relate to the designs. So I wouldn't discredit that entirely, but I understand the sentiment. I mean, I think that's partly what makes you extremely valuable and amazing to work with, is that understanding that you have from your dev experience. Makes it so much easier to communicate those technical ideas. No diss to designers that don't have that background, obviously, but I think it is very valuable.
Yeah. The way I've thought of it in terms of like how my background helps me now is like, I think about it as if like when you take your car to the shop and you have a mechanic work on your car and you're like, I know something is wrong with my car, but I don't really know much about how my car works exactly. And I go in there and I'm pretty like, you know, trepidatious about what they're going to do or how much it's going to cost me, or what I can ask of them to fix my car. So I just feel a lot less comfortable. But with like the tech stuff and being able to work with you guys, I have a much better sense of what I can ask of you and like the extent of what I'm asking. Like I have a pretty good sense of like if this design is asking for you to do something pretty big and crazy, or if it's hopefully pretty close to home.
Right.
So that's helped me quite a bit, I think.
I think that's been a boon for the team as well, right? You mentioned like you'd like to be able to, or one of the things you enjoy is kind of being able to get in and prototype. Part of our process more is like, it's very iterative, right? Like you and product will go and kind of create an initial design, and then the dev team will go and take a whack at it, and then we get feedback on it. How would your ideal process differ from that? Would you want to be more involved, like pairing or getting in there? And this is a little off track from our notes, but hopefully that's okay.
Yeah. So there's this ongoing debate on design Twitter or design Medium accounts or whatever. It's the question that's just, should designers learn to code, right? And there's a million different people like to chime in all different reasons for why you should or why you shouldn't have to, all that kind of stuff. But I almost like to flip it around and be like, should engineers learn how to design? And it's not that I want engineers to like learn how to do UI design necessarily, although really good UI developers are going to learn a lot just by merit of building lots and lots of UI, right? But I think, I don't know if you guys talked about this on your session of like senior staff engineer kind of deal, but there's a certain level when you reach that where you reach it as an engineer where like you're designing solutions no matter what. Like you're architecting a new system, like the way that you have to think about your work and set it up at a conceptual level for the team is all design work basically. So why not be able to like set that up for the team and help everybody to just like think conceptually about what we're making.
I like that. I think engineers should learn how to design. Like, I like the sentiment there. I think about any time like I've been asked to like help design something, and it always just comes out looking like garbage. Holy shit, dude. I mean, holy cow, dude. Heat fire. Oh my gosh, no.
Revenge. Go away.
Oh God, I got to get out of here.
Patrick, help me.
I'm way too small for that. I can't help you, man. I got to run away.
Carter's the best at this game, and it's Patrick and I versus Carter. Go away. Take the blocks and leave.
Are you just spamming the space button?
Yes. I don't know how else to play this game.
Okay, there we go.
Maya
Okay.
says interdisciplinary skills are underrated. Yeah, right on, Maya.
I agree. Maya,
Yeah.
welcome back. Okay, Drew's trying to gobble me up now. Okay, back on track here. As I'm getting chased by my co-host. So, you know what? Take it. JK. You fired.
No!
I'm in a bad place with my blocks now.
No,
Yeah, me too.
I do. What's the right word? Not empathize. Sympathize. I feel the interest in the cross-disciplinary pieces because I mean I myself find design very valuable and interesting. Obviously more so the engineering side of things currently, but like we were talking about, those are not disjoint by any means. So having that ability to do both is very powerful, not just from the design standpoint.
Oh, you know, a follow-on thought with that is that I think it matters even more in really technical products like ours, where there's so much that is just hard. Like if you just throw it over to a designer, it's like they don't know the technical architecture well enough, really. They can't dig into it at the level that you guys can to be
Right.
able to kind of work with the data that we have. For the most part, we're ingesting lots of data that has some structure already. So we should think more about kind of working with it as if we're like shaping like a sculpture out of clay versus like painting a painting on a blank canvas, because it's usually that case. It's like we're starting from something. Oh God, you guys.
Yeah. What was the methodology at Kadri? I'll let you get away with that one this time. Psych. No, I won't. I'm gonna freeze you. What was the methodology you told me about? Or the book? It talked about kind of like molding or shaping things, and it was like a methodology for that.
Yeah, so there's it's the team from Basecamp that, you know, I've always admired just like their thinking in terms of how they Jem says empathy is a two-way street. Right on, Jem. But yeah, Basecamp, I've always admired the way that they just think about product process and engineering process for themselves. Like they've stayed pretty independent, and they don't usually just reflect back like, oh, everyone's doing agile, so we're going to do exactly agile too. They just find what works for them and they do that. And it's usually pretty close to home of what other people are trying to do too, but they find like the specific version of it that is unique and works for them. But they have a methodology called Shape Up, which you can just go to their website and get it. They made a book about it. It's free. And it really it's basically a design thinking book for product people, for engineers, of learning how to take your concept, whatever it is, and just bring it up to the level of clarity to be able to like present it, to get your executive team to kind of place a bet on it and say, here's some real resources, go build that thing. So
Right.
very useful book.
That was one that I thought was really cool. I've actually, like, since you mentioned, I've seen it referenced like everywhere. On kind of like, I guess, stepping away from the process side of things and more on just like, I guess Chum mentioned here. I'll bring this back up. Yeah, empathy is a two-way street between designers and engineers, and I can certainly agree with that. Have there ever been any like instances? I was gonna ask, have there ever been engineering teams you have not enjoyed working with? But let me rephrase the question so as to make it a little bit less aggressive of a topic. What would maybe like differentiate between a good and like an enjoyable team to work with or an effective team on the design side of things and one that's ineffective?
So say that again. What are the
so what makes like a good team, like what makes a team enjoyable to work with from a design perspective or effective from a design perspective?
Yeah.
I imagine like ineffective team would be like there's something there where you're having to go back and forth, right? Like one thing, but it's like a very slow turnaround time. There's all sorts of things we can evaluate there, right?
Yeah. So I think my answer might surprise you guys, and that is that I love engineering teams that don't take designs at face value. And because I want it to be a conversation, like everything that I'm doing, on the design side is just to help us as a team collectively kind of gather our understanding of the problem that we're trying to solve. And here's the solution. So like I take it as far as I can in terms of the visual like design of that up front, but that's necessarily going to have a lot of gaps still because it's not in the code yet. It's not in the browser. It's not interacting with the rest of our platform. And we're going to find stuff that sort of dictates that we're going to need to pivot slightly or adjust the design or whatever. So the worst engineering teams that I've worked with, they just take the designs and then they don't give the feedback up front that there's something technically wrong with it that should be adjusted. And then they take it and they never tell me about it. And then they just build something else, or worse, they just build exactly what I said, even though they knew it was wrong.
How dare they build what I told them to? No, yeah, I think we talked about this in a previous episode. It was kind of one of the signs of a more senior engineer is the ability to identify those gaps and not take something for face value when there's clear holes. You could do it this way, but you probably shouldn't, kind of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes
it's
sense.
Like I want you guys to take my design seriously. I put a lot of thought into them, but I don't want you to just like take it extremely literally and say like this is exactly it and that's it. Like no, it's like we're working together to get something that's going to be the best solution.
I was just running away from Drew. At what point in the process would you prefer to have engineers? Like, when is it optimal to do that? Is it just kind of like a conversation throughout, or is there like a stage where you'd like be able to catch that up front? Understanding like a lot of times like engineers don't know about like the problems until they're already there, right?
Yeah.
What do you prefer in that regard?
So it depends on the project. If it is something where there's a bunch of existing infrastructure, it's very helpful to have engineering input up front to just help me understand what we're working with. Because the worst thing you could do in that case is just make a design that makes absolutely no sense given the current technical infrastructure, and then find that out way too late. So in that case, like early consulting is really helpful. Like you don't have to be fully involved. Like your head's down, like building stuff, managing what's making it into production and all that good stuff. But keeping on like that technical consulting hat early on in the design phase is really helpful, and honestly will make your life a lot easier or make everyone's lives a whole lot easier as the design does come like to production.
Right. I like that. I had a follow-on question for that one. There's a quote you said, this is kind of rewinding just here, but you said when we were prepping for this, you're saying like the further you go in your career, you're going to be designing eventually. Which kind of tying what you're saying, Drew, like you eventually like need to be involved with just more things than code, which is why I'm sure I've talked about this on the stream before, but like we're not coders, we're not developers, we're not web developers, we are software engineers. That is like a thing I love to be super opinionated to an obnoxious degree about, because engineers use like concepts and like principles to solve like abstract and difficult problems. We do that through more than just writing code. Code is the tool by which we, do our craft, but it is a lot more than just writing code. Anybody with an ounce of experience will tell you that, right? So part of that craft should be like, being able to contribute meaningfully to the design. I would say that like a principal front-end engineer, like a senior front-end engineer, that gets into a hairy area, I guess. You could kind of go like, they should be like very familiar with like tooling and like bundles and, all that kind of stuff. Or there's somebody who's very aware of like how to set up a UI to work well, and then also how to set it up to like feel and function well on like the UX side of things as well. They should be able to integrate with the design team very seamlessly.
Yeah.
I think that definitely is. Junior engineers do that differently than like a senior engineer.
Yeah. And like, so the experience that I had where I pivoted into product design was I did it because I was the front end, I was the UI engineer who cared the most about design. And also note that that company at first did not hire another designer. They hired a front-end engineer who had a design eye, right? Because they were very small. They couldn't really afford to have designers on staff for the most part. So I think in many cases, if you're a front end dev, especially, you join a small company, you're probably going to have to do a lot of your own designs to some extent, you know?
Oh
And
yeah,
then eventually you earn the, like your company grows and then you get a cool designer to come help you out.
designer like Patrick.
I can't wait till we get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, we're still waiting. We'll see if somebody shows up one day.
One day.
One day. No, I even just at like JupiterOne, right? Like that takes me back thinking to like I'd get a hey Pat.
Oh, come
I
on.
won't take your T-squares.
I'm too small. You can't even take my blocks yet.
Well, don't challenge me.
Okay.
Oh,
Just kidding.
I'll give them back.
You can't take my 0% block. Oh, I take yours.
But like thinking back, like the CEO would text me at like, 8 o'clock on a Sunday and be like, hey, I had an idea. And like give me like the Slack equivalent of an idea scribbled on a napkin and be like, can you make this? I'm like, yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a special part of like the company, like part of my career for me. It was like I could design these things. And like that was fun. I enjoyed it. I found it kind of daunting sometimes because like I'm not a designer, and anybody who's looked at the settings menu in our app or the alerts page or some of the insights page as they formerly stood will be able to tell you, yeah, Carter is not a designer. But I did have to do it. I just wasn't very good at it, but it worked.
It's really tough. I think, even for the folks who can do it all, like if you have the skill set to like really feel confident and I can design this thing and I can also dev it out myself. It's still, those are two very different mindsets to be in. And so the best way to go about it, you still have to like compartmentalize and be like, right now I'm only designing. And then later I'm only developing. And if you don't do that, it just starts to get really messy and it gets really hard because you're like, well, I'm designing a little bit and then your idea is not that fleshed out. And then you dev it a little bit and you're like, why didn't I think about this more?
It's like every side project I've ever started.
Yeah. Right. Or at the same time, there's this sort of catch-22 of like, I think it's better if you have different people doing those roles, because if you're designing a thing that you're also going to build, while you're designing it, you're already in your head thinking like, I know that I could do this, or I know that I can do this design. Like, so you're already sort of biased in terms of like, I'm going to build the solution that I know how to build versus I'm going to build the solution that's the best thing that I could do. So if you have a designer over there who can like push you a bit, like I think that's where you get the best results.
I like that. I think that's a good insight. How does that? Oh my gosh, how did you go so fast?
James says I seem to be struggling.
In a way, scoundrel, charlatan. Hold please, Patrick.
Oh. No.
I'm going to burn everything you love.
Quote Carter. HR.
You just take my burning bricks away from me. That seems like we should contact the developers. That's a bug.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, this game is distracting. So one of the things we've been building out is we've been working on a design system for, has it been a year now?
Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah. So we started the design system about a year ago, called it Juno. Did you come up with that name?
Who came up with? I did not come up with the name.
It was a baller name. Like, props to whoever picked that one.
It was basically the gist was I knew that we needed a name so that we could refer to it internally and know that we were talking about the same thing. And then I just pinged our channel and I was like, hey, what should we call this thing? And someone,
I think it was Sam. I think Sam came up.
Yeah,
with
it might have been Sam. Yeah,
idea,
he
Sam.
just came in right away with the heat, and we were like, "Yep, that's it." Oh, come
That's
on!
Sam's also the one that named the big red van from our retreat Clifford, which was also great. So
amazing.
Sam has a knack for this.
Shout out to Sam.
For 100x engineering, how do you name stuff?
Shout out to Sam, apparently.
Yeah. So Juno, aside from having a great name, what kind of prompted us to? So we've been using Material UI on our UI code base, and that's gotten us. I don't want to say that's gotten us pretty far. It's gotten us to like, it took us past our Series B, I guess, but we realized like, okay, we need to actually like make this look good. rather than just like a bunch of disjointed components strapped together. What kind of prompted the urge to make a design system?
Yeah, so when I joined, we had a lot of stuff that was built with Material UI, and that was, just a technical decision that was, made early on. Makes a lot of sense. Like, you're a small company, you need a lot of that stuff just off the shelf ready to go for you, so you can go build solutions that help your customer, right? But at a certain point, like, what the people who curate Material UI are optimizing for is they're building this giganto library that's going to be, hopefully useful to the like broadest possible range of applications. And that's just too much. It's like way more than we need, right? We have one specific thing that we're trying to do with JupiterOne, so we don't need every possible scenario of what Material UI could do for us. So what we really needed to do was just hone in on, like, this is the specific subset of material that is core to what we need to solve JupiterOne problems. And then we can use that as the basis and then move on to building out more custom components for our needs and as like a layer on top of that material base layer. I think it's a somewhat, I don't know, I haven't run across another team that's done it exactly like that in the past.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, previous companies I've worked at, we've had UI libraries, but they've been like all like from scratch. And part of me feels like, this could be wrong, and but like, I don't know, if somebody asked me like make a design library, Carter, like we're gonna make a design library, my first thing that I would do is like, sweet, let's make it from scratch, like for a lot of reasons. But part of it also is just like the satisfaction of like creating something from scratch. So kind of wrapping around in UI, it definitely sounds more like a non-engineer led initiative than an engineer led one, if I may be so generic.
Yeah, I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I know that we had another topic on here that was like working with open source versus building your own thing, right?
Yeah.
And you guys can talk about this more from the engineering perspective, but like overall, I think open source is a huge part of engineering culture, right? And in general, people are pretty stoked when they find an open source library that solves the problem that you are like looking to solve. You're like, great, I don't have to build that now. Like, let me integrate it, right? And I can build on top of it. Designers just don't really react that way for the most part. They look at it and they're like, oh, I want to design my own like thing, like from scratch. There's something about designers that just makes them want to prefer that. And it's not a bad instinct, but in many cases, it's not the ultimate problem we're trying to solve at this company. Like, the fact that we don't need to solve buttons. Like, buttons have been solved. And if I never have to build another button again in my career, it'll be too soon, right? I just care that there are buttons and that they work and that they look good, and we can go use them to solve customer problems. So in that regard, like, yeah, let's use open source stuff for the stuff that's just like the foundation of the internet. And then we don't have to worry about them, and we can spend our time designing awesome custom stuff for the stuff that really makes JupiterOne stand out.
Yeah, I will slightly disagree with that. I feel like engineers also share that sentiment, kind of on
Really?
the line of like refactoring versus writing something from scratch. We all have this tendency to be like, I can do it better than the last person, and I'm going to write it from scratch. It's going to be, I'm not going to encounter any of these issues that we're in now, and then you end up, right back where you started. So it's,
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. It's definitely, yeah, who would do that? Yeah, it's a little bit there for sure.
Yeah, so even like when we started using material, it's a good level, like a base layer of consistency that at least you're using the same components out of the same library.
Yeah.
But since there were no guidelines specifically around like how you should implement each of those components, we still struggled internally with a lot of inconsistency where, one input would be styled slightly different than another input just because it wasn't, there was no real guidance around it. And that those kind of little inconsistencies really build up over time.
Yeah,
I will say our implementation of Juno is not exactly coupled with material, and that was intentional, right? So that we could theoretically pivot at some point. So it kind of is its own system in a way. It's not just, you know, a branch off material, but it's also not built from scratch.
Yeah, like think of how daunting that would be to even just like even to ask for the resources from the company to be like, hey, we want to rebuild every element from scratch. Like, why? Like, do customers care about this? No. Do we really care about this? Maybe.
And I'm sure you get that at any company of most sizes, but especially at a startup when we're trying to move so quick and growing so quickly, it's got to be super, super difficult. So it's a good middle ground.
Drew, what level are you? 13? Oh my gosh.
How do you know that?
I won't bother you. I come in peace because
one-time speed.
So
okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, from like the engineering standpoint, we've had a ton of conversations about like what goes in Juno. At what point should like a shared component that we're gonna use across the whole, you know, all of JupiterOne and our different, you know, web apps. At what point do we put it in Juno? At what point do we make it its own NPM package? At what point do we put it in our web toolkit, which we're trying to kill off since it's become a Pandora's box of just aggregate components? What are some of your thoughts on like where you should draw the line on like what is like and Patrick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well from the design side. What is something that is actually like a design library component as for one that's like, that doesn't belong in a design library, but even though it is like reused?
It's a really good question. I think a really difficult question, honestly. And for that reason, we've erred on the side of being very, very, I don't know, aggressive with our filtering and what we do put in the design library. It almost feels like it's really the core pieces, those, I don't even want to call them components. I guess they are components in a sense, but all the underlying building blocks. And I think one of the lines we've used as a metric is if you have to test the component, probably.
I thought you were going to say, is it larger than a loaf of bread metric?
No, that's your metric that makes no sense. But if you have to test it, and I mean, you kind of start to draw the line when there's a significant amount of logic associated with the component, which that's even hard to say because there's certain lower level pieces of that system that will have logic, but really are just reusable components used in a lot of different cases. So I don't know. Hey, Patrick, you have other thoughts?
Yeah. It's sort of, honestly, it kind of bums me out that React came in and just made everything called component.
Right.
So it made it really confusing for everyone involved of like, what is what? Because at least like before that existed, like you could jump on like the Brad Frost school of thought with like atomic design. And even if you're just using that conceptually, it's like, okay, there's atoms, which are these most like the smallest things. There's these molecules which compose atoms. Then there's organisms which compose molecules. And you could kind of use it to think about just composing interfaces, right? But then React came in and the frameworks came in. They're like, nope, everything's a component. And everyone's like, okay, I guess there's tiny components and then there's bigger components that eat those components and whatever, right? But it's all the same term, which makes it very confusing.
Right.
Yeah. We're probably drawing the line at like a half molecule in most instances and everything down.
So a half loaf of bread is what you're saying.
Yes. 2/3.
Well,
take it or leave it.
Oh, 2 slices. Yeah.
Very large slice. One of my metrics I've kind of used, or at least internally, is like, and this is not a perfect metric. Also, where did all the blocks go? I feel like they're all gone now. Drew ate them all. Oh no, the fire got me. One of the metrics I've kind of been using is like, is this something, I like the one like, would I test this? But like, is this something that I could replace with like Material UI or with like Bootstrap? Is like, does this feel like another design library item to me? A table is like a really controversial area for that, right? Of like, should a table go in there or should it not? So, well, I mean, MUI has tables in there, but also it has like the elements used to create the table. I'd say MUI is actually bigger than just a design library, right? Like it's got some functional like components to it as well, like a
design
mobile
system. What's the correct term for that?
I don't know. It's a design system, but like it has like the building blocks but then it has the atoms and molecules, but it also has like some organisms in there as well.
But that's true. They've already figured this out. So I mean, we kind of just can stand on the shoulders and be like, this probably should be in our design library if it's in theirs. So that's not a bad thought.
That's hardly a perfect metric, but
right.
Yeah, that's one that I frequently think about. Patrick, where would you draw that line?
So I've had this conversation with folks on the team a couple times with custom components that have come up, and that you're running away.
You're bigger than me, dude.
I don't know what.
Oh God!
Sorry.
Cow,
Go Patrick. Oh, the party.
I have like the entire continent coming after me right now. Jeez.
Go away.
So here's what I told them. I said, if it's the first time that you've seen this component, just build it in place, and it just exists in like the spa that it lives in, right? And that's fine. It's the first time we're seeing it. If it comes up again a second time, then you start to put it on your radar of like, hey, this thing is starting to show up in a couple places. It seems like it might be, on the short list for items that might merit being in, being systematized. And then if it comes up a third time, basically that is the moment in which you say, hey, this thing is showing up often enough now that we should just take the extra time to abstract out whatever we need to be able to kind of promote it into the system. So that's been my general philosophy, and it seems to have served us pretty well so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming up on time here. I had two more things I wanted to ask you about. First, before we get to like the last question, okay. Are you shitting me? I just had an ice thing spawn on top of me. Tell us the secret to your fame on Twitter. I wish I had the Tyler. If we have links to the tweets, can we drop those in the stream so people can see those? Oh, here we go.
There you go.
This came from it's amazing. Poor groups. 552 likes. That is 551 times more followers than I have on Twitter. I don't even get it quite because I'm not a Figma user. Drew, do you get it?
No, I don't get it. I actually found this meme when we were searching for design-related memes, sent it to Patrick, and he thought it was hilarious. But I don't know what it means. So I'm actually the ghostwriter behind Patrick's fame, so don't believe him.
That's right. I guess I shouldn't have said don't know where this came from. I should have said Drew found this for me. And it's amazing.
Yeah. What does it mean?
So basically what it means is, let's see, groups are what you imagine they are. They're just ways to group together elements in Figma. And it's more of like the old school way that design software would help you, group like elements. And Figma came in and they sort of invented this different base concept, which is called a frame, which behaves a lot more like a div in HTML. So it's just like an arbitrary container. Then they implemented some functionality, which is called auto layout, which is like a property of a frame. So that's why frames and auto layout are making out. And then components. So this, you can think of this like in React, right? So it's like you have a component and then you have different variants of that component that are just, riffs on what that thing is. So that's why they're making out, because they're just, together all the time. And so poor groups, the initial one is just left there all by his lonesome.
You monster, leave me alone. That actually makes a lot of sense. You explained that really well. Because I had no idea what those terms were.
Same. That doesn't answer the what's your secret to your fame, though? Where did that come from?
Man, I've just been plugging away. And what's funny is that I feel like I really don't have a great sense of what is going to pop off. It's always the really simple stuff that everyone can just kind of get behind in one way, shape, or form. So like the other thing, I think my most liked tweet has like a couple thousand likes, and it was just a screenshot that I took of our Figma account, JupiterOne's Figma account, and the covers that I made for all the files. And I dropped that in, and I was just like, hey, good morning to everybody who likes a nice, tidy Figma account. And
Remember that
all
one.
the designers were like, hell yeah, I like a nice tidy Figma account. Let's go. So that's it. Keep it simple and make it something that everyone can just be like, yeah, I love that. And it'll pop off.
Oh, I died right here at the very end. I was trying to steal my pieces from Drew. We're gonna have to try that out on our 100x Twitter account that we'll get one day.
Right.
In closing, Patrick, say something profound, or if I'm secretly a designer inside but I don't know it, how can I find that out as an engineer?
Well, if you're an engineer and you learn so much, you should be learning a lot about design by osmosis of building lots of good designs. So if you just reach the point where you start to think like, at every job I've ever had, basically I ask this question. I ask, what do I like about the job that I'm doing? What do I want to do more of? And what do I not like? And what do I want to do less of? And at a certain point, I just sort of take stock and I try to make a new guess about what would be something that would help me do more of the stuff that I like doing and want to do more of, and what would help me do less of the stuff I don't like and want to do less of. And that's how I've ended up here doing mostly stuff that I like and I want to do more of. So same thing to all the engineers out there. Just keep doing that process and you'll find something sooner or later.
He said something profound and he answered the question.
I was going to say he did both. Well done. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us, dude. This has been a blast. Thanks for letting me steal some of your talks. And thank you for all the insight you've offered. Appreciate your time, and we will talk to you soon. Everybody say bye to Patrick. Patrick. Round of applause for Patrick. I need a better way to outro people off. That's maybe we need an exit animation for like their square. I want it to kind of like just kind of go off the rails. Are you still playing?
I'm trying to get to level 14, and there's no one else.
You're frozen on my screen. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna. Oh, I spawned right now. Oh, the blocks are so big when you start. Anyways, next episode, I've already got it planned out. I got several congratulations from Tyler and Ashley. Well, actually, just Ashley. Tyler didn't congratulate me. So we've already got it planned out in advance. We're going to be talking with Andy Folia. He's one of the directors of engineering here at JupiterOne. He just started. We're going to be chatting with him about what is it like coming in and managing / leading a team that you were not already a part of before. For those of you looking to like transition into leadership, this would be the equivalent of, rather than being promoted to like the leader over the team you're over, it would be being hired on as a new manager or a new leader for a team you have not been on. So I think there's going to be some unique viewpoints we can chat about with him. Come prepared with questions if you guys want. The game we're going to play next week is going to kick ass as well. So stay tuned for that. August 9th. Drew, anything else?
Looking forward to it.
Sweet.
I won the game, by the way.
Yeah, you did win the game.
This is a Drew win. Mark it down. Drew
many of them are Drew wins. I just don't call them out as much as I call out my own wins. So thank you for calling it out. Anyways, let's do our credits thing now.